I'm here with Mr. Dan Jurgens.
Mhm.
First of all, thanks for this interview.
Certainly.
So recently, DC Comics published Superman Hero for All, a one-shot story, which is also a great tribute to the character. Which was the idea behind this story?
Very much the idea of establishing that out of all the heroes, the superheroes in the DC universe, that there are all the heroes, but then above them is Superman. And making it clear that Superman is still the preeminent hero, I think, in comics, but certainly I can say that more about DC. And that when the world is suffering, people are looking to Superman. And the other heroes of the DC universe are looking to Superman for help. And he embodies that with that sense of hope that he conveys, and he delivers.
And during the last 30 years, you have worked on many Superman stories, including the Death of Superman storyline, which was quite a shock for readers at that time. Do you think that the same story could work nowadays?
Yes, I think it could. Superman always has this, I think, place of importance, as I was describing earlier, within the community of superheroes, but I think also beyond that, stories of death, the idea of losing someone, and then examining what they represented and what they meant to us is always one that works. And so that's what we did in that story, and we really did want to make a statement about that character that way. And if you do that well and tell a good story in the process, it will always stay relevant.
And Superman, so is also we can say the most famous immigrant in the comics industry. Do you think that today the best fitting motto could be for a better tomorrow than and the American way?
Yeah, we actually, so if we go back 30 years, we used to discuss whether or not, when we talked about truth and justice, whether it was truth, justice in the American way or something different. And so even then we just said, well, saying the American way is a little too forceful. Are we convinced that is the best way, for example? And so this idea of a better tomorrow, or just truth and justice, or truth, justice, and hope, or whatever it might be, I think when we look at the ideals that Superman does embody, of honesty and integrity and a sense of nobility in terms of doing the right thing, that I think those attributes are still with the character, important to the character, and something that he conveys. So whatever description we come up with that matches that, I think, is the way to describe Superman.
And now Superman has come back to the spotlight thanks to the James Gunn movie. I imagine you've seen it.
Yes.
Do you think that the director managed to capture this essence of the character?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was at the premiere, the world premiere, and afterwards was even able to say to James Gunn, thanks for giving the character that kind of heart. Because I think that's what came through in the movie, is Superman's sense of passion. His humanity really came through in that movie. And along with that then, that sense of heart and wanting to do the right thing. And I think some of that is even what we saw when he had his little tiff with Lois Lane. And, he left the apartment and he was like, wow, Superman just walked out on Lois Lane, really? And then, 2 minutes later, he's at the door, he comes back, and there's that to me is really part of who he is. And I thought all of that was very well put together.
From Superman to Batman, with Mike Perkins, you worked on the Batman First Night, which is set in 1939, and it retells the story during the Second World War. Was it difficult to combine the fictional story of the character with the real events?
It took a lot of research because I didn't want to get anything wrong. And the world of 1939 is really incredibly interesting because at that point, almost every nation on Earth had been locked in some aspect of the global depression for 10 years. A lot of countries were still suffering the negative effects and destruction of World War I, which at that time was called the Great War. We were on the cusp of World War II breaking out. Artistically, a lot of great movies made their debut in 1939, whether it's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Gone with the Wind, or Wizard of Oz. It's just a tremendously compelling time. So we saw, I think, a lot of the stress points in society grow through world events until you just know there's this impending explosion. And that's the backdrop of the book and part of what makes it so interesting.
And where did you take inspiration for the character of the Rabbi, which is a new character to the Batman myth?
Character for which?
The Jacob Cohen, the Rabbi.
Oh, yeah. So that comes from a lot of different sources. And more than anything, if we go back to that time, based on what was happening with Jews throughout Germany and Poland and throughout that entire environment, I wanted to have that kind of a voice in the book. So I actually have a friend who is a rabbi that I consulted with a little bit to say, give me some feedback, give me an idea of what his sensibilities about these things might be, insofar as a guy in a mask and a cape who's running around saying, try and do the right thing. And that's where much of that came from, as well as just this notion of, at the time, America, as were many other nations, was wrestling politically with different factions. One of which we called the Buddhist movement, which was Germanic influence. There was also a strong communist movement because of the Depression. People wanted a different economic system, perhaps. So you had all of these things in conflict with one another, but through that, as I said earlier, you always knew there was this looming explosion, but I wanted a character with that particular sensibility, and that's why I came up with Rabbi Jacob Cohen.
So having written Batman and Superman, two characters which are similar but also very different, how does your writing style change when dealing with the two characters?
Sure. Superman is someone who does not necessarily make a speech. If he's in the room, he provides a sense, I think, of quiet inspiration, and people follow him. He will also explain things. To me, Batman is very terse and short. I write Batman with as little dialogue as possible because I think he's actually, as a person, very subdued. I don't think he feels comfortable around people. I think that's one reason he wants to hide his face behind a mask. So my Batman is a very terse one. He does not explain things. He doesn't ask people to follow him. He just would rather do stuff alone anyway. And I think those are the things that make them different and why they become interesting to write, because of those differences.
And so last question, now you're writing the follow-up to the first night, the second night. Is there an idea to create some kind of universe, like maybe the White Knight from Sean Gordon Murphy?
Right. I don't know if I would go so far as create a universe. I would say that, as Mike Perkins and I talk about this, we have a lot of ideas, though, and a lot of different directions that we could go here. I think as soon as I say create a universe, it scares people. But I think people look for nice, self-contained stories. That having been said, I could see us doing, as I said, we're doing, as you said, we're doing a second volume now. We certainly have an idea that I think is very strong for a third set of books to be a volume 3, and after that, we'll see.
So, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Certainly.
Thanks. Really
My pleasure.